Welcome to Cabo Properties YouTube channel.
Paid a heavy price for floods and mudslides is Freetown in Sierra Leone. More than 1,000 people died there after a mudslide in 2017. Since then, the mayor of Freetown has made big changes to the city in a bid to make it more resilient. And she's also the co-chair of a group of 40 mayors around the world, all dedicated to fighting the impact of climate change. Yvonne, Aki-Sawyerr, welcome to Talking Business. And just describe what happened with these devastating mudslides. Just explain what impact it's had on the city.
The mudslide that everybody thinks of and remembers is the one of the 14th of August 2017, when 1,000 people died in less than 3 minutes. But every year that has followed, we've had similar incidences on a much smaller scale, but nevertheless really devastating. Just a week ago, I was sitting with a family who'd lost four family members, 3 of whom were children. So the impact of these mudslides, of the floods, of the impact of climate change on an environment which is being built without the necessary development controls is devastating, both economically, from the perspective of loss, but much more importantly, from a social perspective, the mourning and the loss of families. It just doesn't make sense for year after year for there to be people whose futures are cut short because of an environmental disaster, which really we should be able to control.
And as you said, it's sort of twofold. One is a lot of deforestation that was responsible for those mudslides as people move and they need places to live. And also the way that property is being built. Just to explain that double whammy.
The impact is double whammy, but it has a number of layers. The first thing, as you rightly said, is extensive deforestation, really fueled by rural urban migration as our population has been growing exponentially. It's a very small city. Freetown is only 82 square kilometers. We represent 0.1% of the landmass of the country, but we house 20% of the population, and that number keeps growing every day. We in Freetown City Council embarked on Freetown the Tree Town, a campaign to plant 1 million trees. We're now at 1.2 million trees. We don't just plant them, we grow them. So they're monitored, they're tracked. It creates employment, but the pace of deforestation is currently outpacing our pace of reforestation. We've now set ourselves a target of 5 million trees by 2028. And in order for us to successfully do that, we're entering the carbon market, which is really an ambitious initiative for us, but one that we're making steady progress with. But none of this is going to really have the positive impact it could have unless there's a change in legislation, unless the local councils are given the authority that they have everywhere else in the world, because you can't separate the delivery of municipal services from the planning of a city. So that's a fundamental challenge that we're really advocating very strongly. The good news is there's now legislation in Parliament that should lead to this happening. But we've had that legislation before. It's not what you say, it's what you do. So this time around, we need to see that legislation enforced and implemented, executed, so that we can save lives, save properties, and really have the resilient city that we need in the face of the ongoing climate breakdown. This is a beautiful city, but it's a city under threat. And that threat is something we can do something about. You know, there are solutions, the solutions I've just outlined at a global scale. I know that what we're experiencing is now a global phenomena for different reasons. Yeah. Climate change is real, and its impact is being felt in cities across the world. Flooding is not unique to Freetown, and the consequences of that are impacting lives globally.
Now, you've directly witnessed the impact of climate change on you and the city and people that you know. Do you get frustrated when there is skepticism in parts of the world that have not directly been affected by climate change? Is there a frustration that countries who are not directly experiencing this are still skeptical about the impact of climate change on people and communities?
There's even a sort of a a contradiction even in the question, because the very skeptics are themselves experiencing climate change now.
Mm-hmm.
You've just mentioned the wildfires in California. We've seen the lowest temperatures ever in Argentina this week in the world. We've seen Turkey having its hottest day since records began. So there's the evidence is overwhelming. And so your question, do I feel frustration? More than frustration, but there's also a recognition that this isn't a question of difference of opinion. This is a question of difference of agenda. A decision that we're going to go for short-term gain over long-term resilience and improved lives for many residents of the world. And what hurts most, if we can put it in sort of such emotional terms, is the fact that that impact is being felt now. No denying it. There's nowhere in the world that is not seeing the impact of climate change. But the extent, the severity of that impact differs, not just in terms of the severity, but resilience. When you have your population that is almost 100% uninsured and already among the poorest in the world, that impact on those communities, that population differs from what happens if the same climate event is experienced on a population that has insurance, that has medical care, that has really the structures in place to enable people to rebuild their lives after going through a climate event. So the injustice that comes from the refusal of those in a position to make a difference, making that difference, denying that the climate crisis is real, is an injustice that we cannot walk away from.
The discussion has changed to adaptation now. This is not about how do we prevent this. This is how do we live with it.
So the question then becomes if it's an admission of failure, who's failed? Those who had the opportunity and the ability to make a difference, certainly not us who are advocating and continue to advocate. It's not a failure of the movement. It's a failure of governments, big money, fossil fuel industry to do what should have done, to make the cutbacks in carbon emissions that we required to give us all a better future. That hasn't happened, but it doesn't mean that we failed. We can't fail. We have to remain hopeful and we have to be strategic as we go forward. We know we're not going to get to 1.5, but what can we achieve? We can't stop saying reduced carbon emissions. We can't keep going at the pace that we're going at now. Adaptation has to become part of the narrative. It already is, because as we've said already, the impact is clear. It's being seen every day. But do we want it to get worse than this? Do we want it to get to a point where the planet is unlivable? No. So the tipping points are being breached, but we're still able to make a difference. So it is incumbent, it is actually the responsibility of us all to not give up on this fight. We need to continue to engage and put pressure on those who see today as being more important than tomorrow.
Yvonne, Aki-Sawyerr, thank you for being on the programme with us this week. It's good to talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, folks, don't forget to
subscribe to this channel now.